Annette Henry had endometriosis, just like her two sisters. A book changed all that. It meant she no longer needed surgery. One of her sisters avoided surgery too, and her husband lost weight. In fact, he lost more than Annette weighs. What was the book? I'm going to let Annette explain. Annette, I know you had endometriosis, and we're going to talk about how you got rid of that, how you sorted that out. But your problems, your gynae problems, actually started much, much earlier, didn't they?
They did. They started when I was in secondary school, and I had no particular idea that it was unusual. I suppose I did because it wasn't experienced by everybody, but of course we didn't talk about it much in those days. I was at school in the 70s and early 80s, and I needed to have at least one day off a month just to be near a toilet, which was pretty awful. It was quite bad. I went to to my GP, who put me on the pill for it to try and regulate things, which did help at the time, but I wasn't really mad keen to be on that. So yeah, it started much sooner. Yeah, and but of course, leading up to endometriosis, first of all, I'd never heard of it, and secondly, I had no idea what was happening. We're talking into my 30s now when this happened, and I was in excruciating pain. And one time in particular, I had to leave the class I was teaching and go and lie down in the staff room or faint, because they were the two options available to me at the time. And I was whizzed to hospital where they found nothing because they didn't do a scan. And so eventually, well, not eventually, it was fairly soon after, really, it came back again. The pain came again. And I took myself off for a scan. I paid for it. And there was a rather large cyst there on one ovary. And so that got attention. That got me into hospital within about 5 weeks, which I thought was rather good, if I'm honest. It seems different now. Now living in Germany, you're in about a week. But anyway, I was pleased with 5 weeks. And one of the things that it suggested was endometriosis, which I haven't heard of. The other was it could have possibly been cancer. And then there were a couple of other options as well, which I don't remember anymore. But anyway, it turned out it was endometriosis. I had a cyst. They called it a chocolate cyst, which is the size of a grapefruit. And I thought there's a lot of relationship to food here. But anyway, I could see that actually. Before the operation, I could see that cyst. By looking down, I could see that it was there. So it was a bit alarming. That was full-on surgery because the hospital where I was hadn't got keyhole at that stage. So I was completely sliced open, which meant a long recovery period. And along with that recovery period, I had to be on some synthetic hormones which induced a menopause, so that it didn't come back. However, it's chronic, so it does come back, and it did come back. I know it doesn't for everyone, but it did in my case within a couple of years. So I went back to the doctor, and he was wanting to put me back on the synthetic hormone, and I said, "Are you aware that you can only be on that medication once in your lifetime?" And he said, and he looked at his notes and said, "Oh no, I didn't realize that." So thankfully I'd been listening when I was in hospital, and I didn't go on that. He gave me some more synthetic progesterone this time, which didn't work very well for me. So I thought, I'm not happy with this. There must be something else I can do. So I started researching natural progesterone. And by this time I was talking to the consultant because it had come back. He was talking about further surgery. And I said, I've found some natural progesterone. What do you think? Can I have some? Because you kind of have to ask for it. It doesn't come automatically on the NHS in Britain. And he said yes. He was really enthusiastic that I was looking for solutions for myself. Very supportive. I really have got very good memories of this man. And I tried that. I still was unsure that it was doing any good. I can't tell you. I really don't know if it was, but it didn't. It kind of doesn't matter, because I walked into Waterstones one day, the bookshop, and saw a fairly thick book, this one, about healing endometriosis through nutrition. And it's written by a nutritionist who had gone through this herself. And I thought, right, interesting. I'm going to read this. Luckily for me at that stage, it is packed with case studies and some scientific research as well, which I absolutely need. And well, science in general to explain the how and why, because I would not have believed that nutrition could do that. I didn't have that concept that food can make a difference to you. I had the medical mindset, and the medics haven't said a single thing to me about food in the whole time I'd been there. So I thought, well, that probably may not work, but I'll read it anyway. Anyway, I read it. I did pretty much everything she said. She suggested this was the recommendations in this one were to become more whole food based, and away from the more processed thing. And in my case as well, to drop dairy, which was very interesting because she'd said in the book to give dairy up, or at least try giving dairy up, if you were from an atopic family. So yet another new word for me. I didn't know what that was. And it meant that if you have, for example, hay fever, there's a good chance you have a problem with dairy. Well, I have had hay fever since I was 11. So I thought, right, I'm going to give this a go. So pretty much overnight anyway, dropped dairy. And I still think today, mainly because I've gone into it much, much more and started looking at the whys and wherefores, that dairy was the biggest factor. There were plenty of other things as well. I was eating better food, so I had more antioxidants and anti-inflammatory food and so on. So I was doing myself lots of favors, but I really think dairy was probably the biggest factor for all sorts of different reasons. They can have different impacts, especially on female hormone health. So the upshot of that is that I never went back to the doctor for anything to do with endometriosis. I didn't need the surgery, and that really was the end of it. I was really, two things happened. One, I was very motivated to continue because I thought in about 10 years' time or so, I will go through menopause, and because this is hormone related, this will help. And I have to say it did. I think I could have done it better still. However, it did help. It was a whole lot better than my entry into gynecological health, if you like. So the exit was much easier. But the other thing was, I think for about 2 years, I was probably quite angry that the physicians hadn't said anything, didn't seem to know anything. I didn't know it wasn't part of their training to learn about nutrition. And I'm still a little bit, well, I don't quite know what the best word is. It still annoys me that is the case, because again, with something like endometriosis, they're giving statements still that it's incurable. And I think that's inappropriate. Yes, medically, there is no cure. I'm aware of that. That is true, but they don't say that. And they don't tell you that you can potentially make some huge changes by adapting the food that you eat. And that leaves a lot of women wondering what they can do, if anything, and probably, I don't know, feeling a little bit helpless, which I think is negligent.
Yeah. I mean, I looked at the NHS website before talking to you to see what they had to say, and causes of it. They listed a genetics or a faulty immune response. They did say that these don't fully explain it. We don't have a total understanding of it. But again, nowhere on the website did they suggest try, changing your diet, eating a healthier diet. That wasn't offered as a possibility at all.
No, and that thing about it possibly being genetic, highly likely that it's genetic, for the simple reason that in my family there are three children. My parents had 3 children, all girls, and we've all had it. And
wow.
What was particularly interesting was that both my sisters knew, but the next one down, if you like, because I'm the eldest, she knew I'd read this and then implemented it and had great success. Hers came back after her operation, and she said, "What was that book you read?" And I rolled my eyes a little bit and thought, this particular sister doesn't tend to read books. This is going to be interesting because this is a big one. And she read it. She did it. She never went back to the doctor. Sister number 3, or daughter number 3, whichever way you want to look at it, for whatever reason, decided not to go down that path. I think she's clocked up 5 operations for it in that time. So yes, genetic it probably is, but I hate that idea that, it's genetic that I got to give up because genes control my life. They often don't. Most of the time, but in many, many cases, you can you can turn them down or turn them up, whatever is needed, that the epigenetic effect. And that's something else that the health service could, it's a health service after all, they could do with being able to tell people this, give them hope and empower them. Because I felt very empowered by this. I felt I'd really done something to help myself. I mean, to avoid surgery seemed like a big deal to me, and still does. So yeah, that makes me a bit cross too.
Yes, understandable. And your hay fever, what happened to that?
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It was the net. I cannot remember when I started doing this, but I know it was a few months before hay fever season, and I didn't really get hay fever. I barely had any of it at all until I went on an inset training day where lunch was provided. And although I selected things myself and I thought I was being careful, I hadn't noticed until it was too late that I had potatoes which were drowned in butter. By the time I was back at home later on in the evening, I was absolutely streaming. I couldn't see a thing. So that gave me a real indication of what had gone on there. And I've been barely troubled with it since. I'm aware of it being hay fever season. I can tell a bit of grittiness in my eyes maybe. But this streaming that I used to do, I mean, I used to do it in front of students who I was testing for their oral exams. I mean, that's not ideal when it looks like they're crying. It was another indication. It was a side effect that I wanted. And that's so often the case with eating to suit your body's need. It really is. And I'm still excited about it.
Yeah. I think you also recommend another book, which I think wasn't around when you were dealing with endometriosis, but you would recommend now for people who are. Yeah.
Right. It's this one by Dr. Neil Barnard, Your Body in Balance. And it's not just about endometriosis in this case, it's female health more generally. Very accessible, very easy to read. There is a section on endometriosis. And he advocates a fully plant-based diet, which I would now as well. I mean, I was going in stages as I progressed from that point where I read the initial book. And I've gradually let go of anything that's not plant-based now. So I would fully recommend that. And he does explain some of the reasons behind the dairy issue. Talks about the lactose, I think, and the issues there. But there are other things as well. There's obviously saturated fat, and there's IGF-1 and things like that to consider. Things that I would really like the medical establishment to be investigating a little bit more, so we had a clearer picture and then an idea of what can be done rather than there's no cure.
Yeah. And your diet now is whole food plant-based, yeah?
Yes, it is. Yeah, and I keep tweaking it and shifting the emphasis of it simply because, when something different happens, my body's telling me that do this now but it's all within the framework of whole foods and it's all completely plant-based. And that seems to work. And, obviously, I mean, I think a lot of people change their food a little bit according to seasons even. You can be flexible with it. I think that's the thing I really like conveying, because a lot of the time people think, oh, just plant, you've got less, it's very rigid. And I understand that. But part of the reason is because if you grew up with, say, meat and 2 veg, that sort of approach, then you think that the vegetable version, that's it. It's what's not there. You've just, there's a little bit of veg left over and that's what you're eating. Must be very boring. Not at all. No, it's hugely varied and diverse. I'm eating more different things now than I ever knew even existed. So
that's interesting. I mean, you've said 2 things along the way, which I've interviewed quite a lot of people now about changes to their diet and how that changes their health. And people have said the 2 things that you said, lots of people have said. And one is that they felt empowered by it, that they're no longer somebody waiting for something medical to work, and that it's been really empowering for them. And the second thing is that they are eating a vast variety of food, something they hadn't dreamt would be possible before they embarked on this journey of discovery about what it is to have a whole food plant-based diet.
it's exciting, and for me, it's more appealing to the senses because the colors, if you're eating lots of different fruit and vegetables, the colors are really appealing. And you know that those colors have something to offer health-wise, as well as being tasty and different textures. And you can do different things with them. Obviously, there's a lot you can eat raw. There's plenty you can eat cooked in different ways, and experiment with them, put things together, or whatever. Or just eat beautiful fruit and enjoy it. You know, there's so much you can do. And it is exciting. And I love being able to talk to other people about it, which is one of the things that I do with Graham, my husband, and just teach other people who want to know how they can transition to a plant-based diet, or more plants, eat more plants. It may be that they don't want to go fully plant-based, and that's fine. It took me years to go fully plant-based. I'm not going to harangue anybody else for not doing. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, Annette, your change of diet and your understanding about endometriosis really benefited your second sister, who has also avoided surgery.
Right.
But I know that meeting your husband and him changing his diets to yours has also had amazing results. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I've got a separate interview with Graham that if people want to have the full story, but just tell us a little bit about that, can you?
Yes, well, he was very accommodating, and in that he was willing to eat the sort of food I was eating by and large. And I was still making progress at this stage, really, towards a better diet, but it was different from what he'd been eating. And over the course of a few years, he lost weight, not just a little bit of weight. He lost what I weigh in weight overall, and he sustained it because now we're both fully plant-based, and he pretty much finds it easy. Very few fluctuations now in his weight. He's able to maintain it. So yeah, it had a profound effect. And the losing the weight helped with his blood pressure. So he came off blood pressure medication, and he was already coming off statins quite early on, which turned out to be a good move for him. And he's been able to sustain all the right kind of values there as well. So on the whole, he's pretty damn healthy, which is great. That's one heck of a side effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So if you're interested in listening to that, there's a separate video with Graham. So you work as a nutrition educator and as a breath coach, I think, as well.
Right. Yeah, this is a newer thing. Again, my health has pointed me in a new direction. I discovered I was breathing dysfunctionally. I actually had the breathlessness after COVID, and I thought it might help with that. So I realized I was breathing dysfunctionally. Not only did it do that though, but and this is the most amazing thing for me, that I started to notice I was sleeping better. And this has been a very long and drawn out process as well. It's still getting a little bit better. I think I'm gradually changing my autonomic nervous system, which is taking some work. But I had insomnia for about 30 years. And I have to say I still do. My sleep is better. I'm actually sleeping better. But in all that time, I know once you get to menopause, there's a tendency to think this is not going to get any better at this stage. If anything, it's going to get worse, not better. So yeah, I'm hugely enthusiastic about that as well, because if it can have those kinds of changes, just knowing how you breathe, you don't notice that you're not breathing properly. You don't. It's normal to you. It's too close to home. It's too normal, so you don't necessarily realize unless there's some reason for it to be very obvious. So yeah, those two things. I've lived through them and continue to be excited by them. And so why would I not share them with other people? So yes, what the two of us do together. Yeah.
Okay. And the links for that, if people want to contact you, I'll put those in the video description. So thank you very much for your time. I mean, it's a really fascinating story. And when you talked about your three sisters and their experience of it, I think that's particularly poignant because, you share a lot of the same genes, but the outcomes have been different for, particularly for your third sister. So thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking me to be interviewed.